What you're looking at here is my recording of the bongo part for Bruno Mars' Count on Me. Now, I deliberately did this poorly. I deliberately hit this drum way too hard so that it overdrove the preamp and distorted a little bit. I did this to illustrate the difference between these peaks down here and this peak way up here. What can we do about this situation? Obviously, these are going to be really quiet. This is going to be really loud. How am I going to turn this down so that everything's equal, or turn this up? If I turn the track up, this peak is going to distort even more. Of course, I'll be able to hear these, but this is going to be distorted. What I need to do is equalize the distance between this top peak way up here and this peak way down here, and then I should be able to turn up the whole track. A compressor will help you do this. So once again, I did do this to illustrate a point. Let's look at this FBK compressor. There's a couple of compressors in BandLab, but this one is pretty easy to understand. The first two controls are time-based. This is how quickly will this compressor start to work. This is going to work within 1 millisecond of the first transient that it sees, which is great. There may be situations where you want it to be later, but this is not one of those cases. Release. How quickly, in milliseconds, will the compressor stop working? Since these are percussion hits and they're all very short, something like 318 or even like 250 would probably be all right. Again, if you have something that's longer, a long note held by a vocalist or a long guitar chord or something, you might change the release time to be longer. But for percussion, these are all short. Squeeze. This is where it starts to get a little confusing. This is set on a scale of 0 to 10. Where does it begin to engage? That's what squeeze does. So at 0, the compressor is basically off. So here, it's going to be on a little bit. Here, it's going to be on a lot. It's going to affect everything. What makes this control a little more clear is when it's expressed as a threshold. So let me show you the Digicomp. Digicomp has a threshold control. These controls are the same. Attack, release, this says squeeze. Attack, release, this says threshold. Squeeze and threshold are really the same thing, but threshold is measured in decibels. So at 0 decibels, this control is off. The compressor won't do anything. It's saying that the compressor won't engage at 0 decibels. Here, the compressor is going to engage at 1 decibel. So anything below the threshold is going to get compressed. Here, anything 60 dB below the threshold is going to be compressed. The control will start to turn itself on. So this is a huge scale. This is basically the same thing, but it works on a scale of 1 to 10. So, and 0 is all the way to the left, where here, 0 is all the way to the right. I'm going to turn this off. I think this is a little simpler to understand. At 0, your compressor isn't going to compress anything. Here, it's going to compress things that are a little bit above 0. Where's 0? Well, right there. You can even see it if you hit the automation. There's 0. So if you want the compressor to start to compress almost everything, you'll move it up to 10. But I'm not going to do that. I don't want to compress these small transients. So maybe I'm going to back this down to around maybe 7 or 8. How about we do 7? So again, it's on a scale of 1 to 10. 0 being no compression, 10 being everything being compressed. Now, what's ratio? At a 1-to-1 ratio, that's nothing. So it's basically saying that anything that's 1 decibel above the threshold that we set, which again is the squeeze thing, is going to come out as 1 decibel. So that's really off for all functional purposes. So here, if I set it, anything that's 2 decibels above whatever I set here is going to come back as 1 decibel of volume. So it's going to get softer. If I'm up here and I have a 10-to-1 ratio, anything that is 10 decibels above my squeeze setting here is going to come back as 1 decibel. That's a reduction of 9 decibels. So that's a significant amount. So this setting is going to make everything quieter. That's okay. It's still going to close the distance between this peak and this peak. Let's export this and see what it looks like. And then we'll apply some makeup gain. I'm going to set the makeup gain to 0. File, download, tracks. All right, so I've downloaded this compressed track so you can see what it looks like. Not what it sounds like, what it looks like. It's more obvious when you see it here. So let's look at the distance between the peaks. It's closed. There's no huge difference between these peaks. If you look at this one, it's an enormous distance between these peaks. Here, it's closed. But what's happened is the entire track got soft. What I really need to do after I compress everything is to bring everything back up to a regular volume. So that is makeup gain. Let me delete this track, and I'm going to export this one more time. But I'm going to change my makeup gain setting to be, let's go 10 dB. And now I'm going to export it again. Okay, so this is the exact same file with makeup gain. Look at that. It's much louder than the other track, and the ratios among the peaks have been improved. The peaks that were distorting before are much lower, and the distance between this peak and this peak is much closer. So let's listen a little bit. Here's the first one. This is with no compression. I'm going to turn off the effects, and let's listen to it. Now, I did compress that track, and then I exported it, and then re-imported it over here. So we shouldn't hear as many big peaks. Notice that the two drums sound closer together in volume, and one doesn't stick out. So compression is going to push down the entire track, bring the loud peaks a little closer to the soft peaks, and then with makeup gain, you can bring the entire track up in volume, and you'll have a little bit more even dynamic range. That's what compression does. You should apply it to your drums. You may want to apply it to your vocals. You might want to apply it to all of your tracks. But be tasteful with it. You can, if you're not careful, suck all of the dynamic range out of your track. And that might not be the best effect. In this particular case, I certainly had one drum that was louder than the other drums, and I needed to bring it down. And I've accomplished that using the compressor. The amount of compression that you choose to use is subjective, so use your ear and let that be your guide. But it is a valuable tool and one you should use. For this assignment, definitely apply it to your drums. Good luck.